Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to jump right into all of the stuff that I worked with in May of 2024. We are going to talk about the decks that I worked with, the practices I engaged with, and take a look at my tarot journals. So without further ado this time, let's just jump on in. We're going to start with the decks that I worked with just for various practices and things. And then I'll talk about my decks that I used in my fellowship, which is the tarot adventure that we're doing here in the membership on my channel. So to start with, I picked up the B Tarot. I have edged mine. I edged it in this yellow because it just needed to be edged. Anyway, this deck has really surprised me. So it's sat in a very specific place for me, where I am using it for readings around my creative work. So basically around any work-related things that I do, I'm using this deck as my primary tarot for that, and I am tapping very specifically into bee energy for that, because bee energy, busy as a bee, all of that kind of thing, right? It feels like it really relates well to the type of creative work that I do, which is kind of a little bit hodgepodgey all over the place. The imagery is beautiful. I really, really like it. The guidebook is fantastic. I have gotten into the guidebook. I don't necessarily need it, but I like that I have it available to me when I want to kind of look at what the creator had in mind for these particular images and what they mean in terms of relating to the tarot. But for the most part, it works really well just as a solid reader. And I've been pairing that with the Seasons of the Witch Beltane, which is the one with the bees. I can't ever remember the name of it. I always just say it's the Seasons of the Witch, the bee one. And I've been pairing it very specifically with this, creating that focal point with this particular deck using the keywords and the imagery. And I am tying into the messages on the card a little bit. So these two together have been absolutely amazing for my creative work readings, because it's just really tapping into, like I said, that bee energy, that community energy, and also the creative energy. So it's like a melding of all of those things together in one, which for me just perfectly sums up the work that I attempt to do here in this space and on my other channel and, in my social medias and things like that, my membership. So it really is a wonderful representation of that for me. I'm using the Seasons of the Witch Beltane as my focal point. So the message here would be, the focal point would be indulge. And then I'm using the Prince of Jars and the Keeper to kind of flesh out that message. I will be honest, I actually am using this with dice divination, and I have my Fey Wild Honey or Fey Honey Wild. I can't remember what the name of the dice are, but I have these I'm using with this particular trio, and I'm doing dice divination with cards with this. And so I will be talking about that more as as we continue to flesh that out. That's something I'm doing with Lisa, and we're working on that. Hopefully I'll be able to bring that out here very, very soon, because I know lots of you have asked how to incorporate dice into your card readings. We do that in the fellowship, so if that's something you're interested in, you can come hang out and do that there with us as well. But the dice divination is full casting with dice. That is a sort of process and structure that Lisa and I have developed, and I've been working on fleshing that out. So hopefully I'll be able to share that soon. But I am using these two decks with my dice, and primarily using dice divination as the main framework for my creative work, because it works really well. It works really well for a lot of things, but it works really well for my creative work because it allows me to really flesh out a larger scope of things, which is fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about these two decks, because I kind of got off on a little tangent there. These two decks I feel like are kind of made to go together. The themes are spot on. The artwork is really compatible. The messages that I get from the Seasons of the Witch are always really in alignment with what's going on in the cards. So here we have chant, hear me loud, hear me roar, for I am here in my truth. And we have that between the Three of Swords and the Ten of Jars. That's beautiful. I really like it. These two feel like a little match made in heaven, really. I don't know that I would really pull out the Beltane Oracle for much else. I did talk very recently in my Coffee and Cards with my members about how I really don't use the Seasons of the Witch oracles. I really like them. I've got this whole Pokemon thing going on with them where I really want them all. I actually don't work with them very often. They really don't fit very well into my practice, if I'm being honest about it. But occasionally I do find where the deck is just really well suited for a particular tarot, and that is the case with this. I have the same thing with the Samhain Oracle, the Seasons of the Witch Samhain. There's some very specific decks that I work with that particular oracle with, and it sits really in alignment with the deck. And that's how I tend to use them. I don't really tap into them in their seasonal energies. I really don't use them like you're supposed to, which is really just, kind of my life. I never do anything the right way. I never do it the way you're supposed to, but I find that it works for me in that way. So I don't use the Seasons of the Witch decks seasonally. I use them when their seasonal energy aligns with other things that I'm using and other practices that I'm engaging with. So for this kind of Beltane energy fits really well with my creative work. It works beautifully with the Bee Tarot. Like they're married in my mind. Like they will probably always come out together along with my dice. They're all in a relationship together, and they all just need to kind of hang out and do their thing together. So another pairing that I really love throughout May and that I'm continuing to work with in June is my Tarot of Vampires paired with the Lilith's Oracle. And this mass market, this is indie. Here is the book for the Lilith Oracle because I do get into this. This is a core part of how I work with this deck. What this little pairing is for me is my Lilith pairing. So these are my Lilith decks. The Tarot of Vampires, like it's taken me a long time to figure out where this deck wants to sit in my collection. I think I talked about it in a Playing with Pairs where I kind of discovered this pairing. It just didn't work for me. Like I like it, but it just didn't have a place in my practice up until recently. And now that I have paired it with the Lilith and I've been using it in my work with Lilith as a divine goddess energy, it is just working out beautifully for me. I'm absolutely loving that. I've got it paired here with the Lilith Oracle. Both of these decks are modified. I've just edged them, this one in black and this one in red. This has fine art, and then there's a key word and a key phrase. I'll be honest, I can't read them most of the time, so I do have to get into the guidebook for that, but I really don't mind because I always get into the guidebook when I'm working with this deck because the messaging in the guidebook is really where it's at for me. I think the art is beautiful and it pairs really well with the Tarot of Vampires, but it's really about the messaging coming through in alignment with the guidebook as well. So these two together, again, how I've been working with them is this kind of represents the message or the energy of bringing Lilith into the reading, of creating a conduit between me and that energy. And then I'm using the Tarot of Vampires to really flesh out that message. So it's been a really great experience. Definitely something I am still working with because I'm still working with Lilith energy in general. So I'm still doing these kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, a conversation reading between myself and Lilith energy. And I'm really loving the two of these together. There's just something about this art and this energy that tied in with the idea of, Lilith and what she stands for, what she means, kind of that whole bucking tradition. I'm not going to be what you tried to make me to be. And I'm going to be who I want to be and how I want to be her. And I'm not going to conform to your ideas. And both of these decks really embody that energy really well for me. Even though this is the Tarot of Vampires is very kind of like late 90s, early 2000s kind of vampire-ish vibe. I don't even know when this deck came out, but that's kind of the energy that it gives. Like very Interview with the Vampire kind of, which I love, like absolutely love that energy. But it's a very specific energy for me and I just couldn't figure out where it sat in my collection. And then I realized that that's what it represents. It's like the whole idea of the vampire, the Queen of Demons and Lilith and all of that is all about bucking tradition. It's all about not letting other people put you in a box and telling you how to be or who you are. It's about embracing your own sense of self, even when that makes other people uncomfortable, right? And that's, I think, a great messaging for the vampires as well. And they really go well together. I mean, Lilith is the Queen of Demons, Queen of the Night, as it says here. I could read that one. Know your worth. Occasionally I can read them. But I feel like that energy really flows across both of these decks where it's very unapologetic. And that's the thing I love, right? Both of these decks just are what they are and they are unapologetic about it. They really tap into that whole idea of being raw and primal and self and not getting caught up in the boxes that other people put us in. It's stepping outside of that and being your own person, right? And I really love that. That's definitely the way that I work with Lilith energy and kind of what she represents for me. The idea of tapping into like the primal feminine self, the self that you are when you step away from what society and culture and upbringing all tells you that you're supposed to be, and when you just are who you are unapologetically. That to me is Lilith energy. That to me is saying, I'm not going to be the thing you made me to be. I'm going to be whatever I want to be, what I choose. It's my life, and I'm going to choose what I do with it. And I feel like both of these decks just really, really tap into that energy beautifully, and they work so well together. Like we have Wilderness with Freedom and Solitude between the Hermit and the Six of Skulls. The way that the messaging works on these two decks together is really fantastic too. I always find that it's just really keyed into the thing that I really need to look at and explore, but don't necessarily want to admit, right? Or I'm not currently admitting that to myself. We have the Nightbird act with stealth between the Six of Girls and the Hierophant. That's just kind of funny. When I'm not really admitting that to myself, these decks kind of call me out on that, and that sort of communion with Lilith energy is what I tap into for that experience. I really love these two together, and I'm so excited that I brought this into my collection, because had I not, I really probably wouldn't have realized that this for me is my Lilith deck, and that's where the energy sits, and that's how I'm currently using it in my collection. And it's an amazing experience. They work so well together. Just real quickly, I want to kind of just show you this little guidebook. It's very, very small. There's not a lot of cards to this deck either. It's only 28 cards. So like, just so you know, but I feel like it's 28 very well done cards, and pairing that with this little guidebook that talks a lot about like Lilith energy, and then we go into the cards. There is this nice full page for each card, and I feel like between the guidebook and the quality of the deck and the cards, like it really does make it worth the money to me, even though generally I would not be buying a deck that only had 28 cards. That's like under 30, and I'm like, that's usually a no-go for me. But paired with the book, I think that this was definitely worth it, but I did just want to point that out because there's really only 28 cards, and that's very small when most of our decks we're looking at like between, you know, 40 to 50 for an oracle and 78 for a tarot. 28 feels very, very small, but it really works. They're 28 very succinct cards, and I do not feel like I'm missing anything when I'm working with this deck. It doesn't feel skimpy in any way, shape, or form, especially when I pair it working with the guidebook. So I definitely feel like I'm getting my money's worth, but I wanted to just point that out because it is kind of a little bit of a different thing for an oracle. Okay, so now let's talk about the other two decks that I've been using for just kind of more, I would say general readings, but yeah, just like general readings, right? Just a general tarot and oracle that just works beautifully for anything that I throw at it. I did a whole video on this and just happened to pair this with it. But this is the Unicorn's Journey Tarot. This is the sample copy from my very dear friend, Lisa Pepez. Like, this deck is amazing, y'all. I did a whole video. Like, I legit cried in the video. Like, I had to stop. I cried during the video. And like, y'all know I'm not like squishy is the thing I struggle with. So the fact that I cried while making the video and I had to stop, and like, it was a whole thing. I have been absolutely loving working with this deck. It's such a solid reader. Like, it works for anything, everything. It's amazing. The way that Lisa has managed to take this whole unicorn theme and unicorn world and Mystic's journey and make it so open that it really works for any sort of thing that you throw at it. It's just like, that's just amazing. Especially because I have a tendency to like really pigeonhole decks. Like, this deck is meant for this, and this deck is meant for this. This deck is meant for everything. And like, I'll be honest, this is a very me thing too, because I throw it down here with my oracle that I created. So this is the Sacred Threads oracle. So when I paired these two together, it's really just like Lisa and I having a conversation on the table, which is so cool. And it's really interesting to pair these two together because this is like her sacred world and my sacred world blended together. And I'm sure I have other decks that would be more energetically and artistically in alignment with the Unicorn's Journey Tarot. I'm sure I do. I think I did some pairings in that video where I showed some of the decks that I could possibly pair with it. But like, I'll be honest, this is the pairing for me because it's Lisa and I on the table. And it makes so much sense to me every time I pull out these cards. And even though, like, I mean, mine is a hodgepodge of things that I feel like are sacred within this world, and I'm pairing that with the unicorns, and it so works for me. But it could, again, just be a very me thing because this is a deck I created, this is a deck my best friend created, and so putting them together is just like, it's a no-brainer for me. It's a no-brainer. The Guardian between the High Priestess and the Hierophant, I mean, it's everything. It's everything. I really have a hard time articulating this experience. Like, I know I talk about trying to articulate felt experiences is really difficult for me anyway, but trying to do it with these two pairings is like, it's impossible because it's such a felt experience. I know what went into the creation of both of these decks. I mean, obviously I know what went into mine, but that sounds stupid to say, but like I know what went into the creation of these decks. I know what's behind the cards, the art, the story. And so when I pull these cards out, I'm layering all of that in together. Oh my goodness, purification between the Hermit and Temperance. I mean, yeah, it's just everything. I don't even have words. I don't even have words. Hope between the Queen of Water and the Eight of Water. They work so well for me. It's just a thing. Again, I'm not gonna try to articulate it because it's just not gonna happen. I mean, I attempted in that video. I did a reading with these two decks together. If you want to see that, I'll leave it linked below for you. Okay, real quick, I just want to touch on a couple of other decks that I've been dipping in and out of throughout the month and that I have done videos on. This one is the Heartwood Tarot. I did a whole like walkthrough and reading and had a moment with this deck. Like, I'll be honest, I've had many moments with this deck. I really enjoy working with this one. I'm not going to go into too much detail talking about how I actually work with it because I ended up doing that in that video, so I'll leave a link for that below if you want to check it out. This deck to me is all about making moments manageable. It's all about the inner landscape and how sometimes the world feels really big and scary and like I can't. In the outer world, this deck reminds me that there are things that are within my control, right? I do have control over the little things in my life, the little moments. And this deck is just absolutely everything for sinking into that. I am really enjoying working with it. It has not left my table since I got it. It's just living up here. I do want to mention I also bought this beautiful bag from Crystal Haven UK. I'll leave a link for that below because it's just the most phenomenal fit for this deck. And it just makes the whole thing, getting this deck out just feels like a whole special thing. And this is the deck that I've been using primarily for any of my mindful moment readings. So when I'm having a struggle in a moment or I just need to take a breath or things are feeling a little bit overwhelming and I need to just take a minute, I will shuffle this deck and pull a card and sit with that message for a little bit. If I feel the need to do more, to explore more, I've got some readings that I've been playing with. That little sort of in and out reading or inside outside, external internal that I did in that video, pairing this with the Oak Ash and Thorn is something that I've also been playing with a little bit. I didn't get that out to show that here, but I talked about that and shared that in that video, so definitely feel free to check that out if you want. But I'm absolutely loving this deck. It's just living on my desk because it is the perfect deck for when I feel overwhelmed or things get a little much or the world feels very cold and big and lonely and scary and all the things. When I feel like this is me, this is the deck I go to. And it's amazing how often that happens in a day and how often I'm pulling this out because like as a person who struggles with anxiety anyway, like it doesn't take much for me to have a little anxiety spike. It's not enough to derail my entire day, but I have anxiety spikes throughout the day. And this deck has been phenomenal for just, okay, take a moment, like let's just do it. This is what I do with this deck. I mean, I've done readings with it, like full-on readings too, which I really enjoy, but I just take a moment and I shuffle. I don't know if there's plans for a pocket edition of this, but I feel like a mini deck, but I feel like if there is, I'm absolutely gonna need one. Because it's this deck in mini form, I don't know, it just feels like it would be everything. I love it in this form too, but in everything. Also, mine is a prototype copy, so not entirely the final version, but let's just pull a card. What do we got? We got Temperance. I mean, this is what I've been trying to tap into for the last few days, is just this idea of finding that balance because, oh my goodness, there's so many things going on and I need to find the temperance within that because I can't be full on all the time because I get burnt out, and this is where I'm at, trying to sit in my temperance space, and this is amazing. All right, another deck that I have had fun exploring and playing with throughout May, which I also did a video on, is the Wisdom of Pooh Tarot. This is such a gorgeous deck. I have a special place for Pooh in my life and in my heart. I talked about it in the video, so I won't go into it here. It definitely relates to childhood things. It definitely relates to my own children. But this deck, I don't know, this deck, when I'm like, this is a good mood deck, I think. I think this is where this deck is sitting for me. You know, as I'm working with decks and trying to find where where they fit within my very vast collection. And not every deck needs to have a very specific place and purpose in my collection, but I prefer that the majority of them do, because then I know why I have them, right? I know what I can lean on them for. This deck for me is definitely, it's sitting in that space of good mood deck. If I am feeling just a little bit like crabby, I've been pulling this deck out. It's actually a good kind of like, I mean, I know I'm all about the rage decks. Like I absolutely 100%. Rage is a valid emotion, especially when it's handled and channeled in a healthy way. But sometimes I can't be in that ragey moment and I'm just like, I'm raging over the stupidest things and I just need to calm down. This deck actually is kind of like my anti-rage deck. It's so calming, so soothing. It's kind of similar to the Heartwood in that way, but they have completely different energies. This is like, I need to just feel better about things. Like I just need a smile deck. Is that a thing? It's not, but I'm gonna make it a thing. This is a smile deck. It's not that I need a hug. I need a smile. I need somebody else. You know how when you're walking through like a store or something and some random stranger just smiles at you for no reason, right? There's no context behind it. They just look at you, you look at them, you have a moment, you smile, they smile, it's a thing, you move on, you will never see that person again. Not that I won't ever see this deck again, but you know that moment of connection when it's just pure like happiness. It's just a smile. Like that's what this deck is. It's a good mood smile deck. So whenever I need to smile because I'm feeling a little like this, I can pull this deck out and I give it a shuffle and I pull a card. And it makes me smile. It makes me happy. So it is definitely a good mood deck, but it's kind of that anti-bad mood. Like when I'm just like feeling like I just need a moment of sunshine, a moment of happiness. I'm finding that because in the Pacific Northwest, like our coming into, you know, the spring summer energy, like sometimes it's summer and sometimes it's spring. Sometimes it's sunny out and nice, and sometimes it's today where it's like all rainy and gloomy. And I've actually been pulling this deck out on those rainy and gloomy days because like I'm ready for the sun and the summertime and the warmth and the light, and that's not happening right now. We're in the gloomy, rainy portion. So I'll just pull a card and get a little sunshine smile, and I love it. It's amazing. I think I talked about this deck being like getting a teddy bear hug, or it's like it is a teddy bear. I cannot keep all of my little metaphors straight, but it is a hug deck, but it's also a like smile, good mood deck. And you know, again, trying to articulate things, I'm not so good at it, but I love this strength card. It's such a good mood thing. It is cuddly and warm, and it's like a warm, honey-dripped hug and a smile all in one, and I really do adore it. Wow, I really did work with a lot of decks this month, more so than I have in previous months, so I apologize, but we've just got a lot to go through. We haven't even gotten into my fellowship decks yet. So this is the other sort of, every month they kind of have like or at least this year, I have like a deck combo that is kind of like the deck I use for just whatever, right? I mean, I have been using the Unicorn's Journey and the Sacred Threads, but those are more for like when I'm feeling like I need a specific sort of energy or advice. These are the two decks that I've just been using for absolutely anything else, right? If it's not related to a particular practice or type of energy, it's just, I'm just needing to like, I just need to pull some tarot and do some readings. This is the decks that I've been using. It's also the decks that I use for my energetic month ahead, which we'll see in my tarot journal. This is the Tarot de Carla Tides. Both of these are mass market decks. This is one of my favorite decks. And like I've talked about the Dreaming Way as kind of like, it's just my go-to deck these days, but this one is very quickly creeping up on the, like in the top 10 list, because I just love everything about it. I love the illustrations. I love the whimsy of it. It's a little bit pippy in places. It's a little bit bizarre in places. It doesn't necessarily always follow Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, which I love. Sometimes it goes its own way. It's got some pop culture references to it. It is just like everything I love kind of all wrapped up into one deck. It's kind of cool and funky, and I love it. So I've been definitely using this for just any sort of reading that I'm doing around just whatever, right? And just need a message, or I've got a question or whatever. These are the two decks that I've been going to all month for that. And this is the Modern Nirvana Oracle, which I absolutely love. This is Wow, right now, probably one of my most used oracles. It pairs so well with so many of the things in my collection, but also, like, I just love the succinct keyword. The guidebook is really great, so I definitely get into the guidebook when I'm working with this particular deck, but it's just been a great sort of all-around oracle deck, and with the Tarot de Carlotides, it's like my favorite. It's my favorite. Aesthetically, they are beautiful together, but also energetically, they pair together really well. And the readings that I get from them are really succinct. This is direction, the Tower, and the Ace of Swords. Yes, pick a direction. I almost always get into the guidebook when I'm working with the Modern Nirvana Oracle. And I've said a million times on my channel, I do not want to be reliant on an Oracle guidebook. I don't want to have to use the guidebook in order to work with the deck. My little rebellious inner teenager heart goes, nope, nope, you can't make me and I'm not gonna. But when the guidebook is so well written that I choose to get into it every time, that's a different story. And that's how I feel about this particular guidebook working with this oracle. I don't need the guidebook. I can work with this deck just as it is without getting into the guidebook, but I absolutely love getting into the guidebook because I really enjoy the messages in there, and it really helps me deepen my understanding of the card and how it's showing up for me within the context of my own reading. And then I'm looking at the tarot for expanding upon that message. This Hierophant might be my favorite Hierophant card ever. I'm just saying. It's just absolutely phenomenal. I love it. And they're very modern. And I guess these days, like, I'm just leaning more into that. It's like either really geeky, nerdy type of gamer stuff, or it's like this kind of modern sort of vibe. That tends to be where I'm leaning these days. So these two together work really well. It just feels like it very succinctly represents like life and whatever it is I've got going on. This Ten of Pentacles. See, that's the thing I love. Like, we've got this sort of imagery over here with this Five of Cups, and then we've got the dragon, which it encompasses everything that I love into one deck. The more I talk about it, the more I use it, the more I look at it, the more, like, the closer it creeps up on being like that #1 most used deck. I absolutely love it. Not only do I love the art and the imagery and the messages, it's also the perfect size for me. It's a little bit smaller than a standard tarot, so my tiny hands don't struggle with it at all, and it shuffles beautifully. So, like, it ticks every single box. There are not many decks in my collection that I can say actually tick every single box, but that one does in terms of a tarot deck. And it's mass market and really affordable, so, like, even better. But I absolutely love it. Like, this Three of Pentacles too. I love the Pentacle suit in this deck, and the Pentacle suit is my favorite. And just, I don't know, the coins with the little skulls, it's just everything. It's just everything. I love it. Okay, but these two together, again, very succinct, very like, I have a question, I needed guidance, I need direction, I need whatever. These two together every time just really just hit it spot on. This is what you're struggling with. This is where you need to, what you need to know about it. This is what you need to explore, where you need to go. They just work so beautifully for that. I just felt like this is the energy that I needed, that kind of weird blend between reality and fantasy, which is where I live most of the time, right? Sometimes I'm in fantasy, sometimes I'm in reality, and sometimes I'm in this weird hybrid of both. And that's really where both these decks sit for me. So they very succinctly represent me in my life and how I engage with my world, I think. And I think that's the thing that I really love about them and why they work so well for me. Before I put those away, I do want to mention that I did also pair it with the paper oracle. This is a beautiful little Lenormand / oracle. I absolutely love his work. It's just amazing. This I have been using really quite frequently this month. I probably should have like put it in here with the pairing, but like, look at these together. Like, they're amazing. I've been using this really as like a Lenormand / oracle. I think you'll probably see it in my journal, but like, this is like the anchor. It's not the focal point. Does this make sense? This is the focal point. This is the focal point. This tarot explores it deeper. This is the anchor. What each reading is rooted into, the message that it's the like core essence. That's how I've been using this. I love this little deck. It's amazing. I don't talk about it near as much as I should because it's like, it's one of those that's quite frequently at hand, and I forget to mention it because it's just like one of those that, like, if I need that very succinct message, that anchor, that there's no questions asked about what it is that it's telling me, this is the deck that I pull out, and I love it. which is funny because I made a Lenormand too, but I like, I was gonna say I like this one better. It just has a different vibe, right? My Rested Lenormand has a totally different vibe than this. We're finally going to get into my decks that I used in the fellowship, which is the guided tarot adventure, really, that we're having this year in my membership, where we are kind of blending narrative storytelling with a tarot practice. For May, we were venturing into the Mermaid's Cove, and I had a really difficult time choosing decks for this. I ended up going with, because I kind of was like, maybe I want mermaids, but I don't really want mermaids. So like I originally had thought when I created the quest for the month that I was going to legit use my mermaid deck, the Mermaid Tarot, and I didn't. I ended up going with this particular deck. This is the Akashic Tarot. I don't remember which edition. Oh, the Star Child Tarot, sorry. The Akashic edition, I think, yes. Star Child Tarot Akashic edition, if I could get the name of the deck correct, would be amazing. And this is the main tarot deck that I used for my readings within the fellowship practice and the prompts. I really like this deck. I do have the other edition of the Star Child Tarot, but I tend to gravitate toward this one, just I think because it's actually smaller and easier for me to use. I paired that. So we have a few different things we do in the fellowship. We have kind of particular prompts and readings that we do. Activities. We definitely incorporate dice, so I'll show you my dice that I used as well. And I paired that with the Moonology Manifestation. This was the primary oracle deck that I used in the fellowship for the month for my readings. These decks, and honestly, this Moonology goes really well with all of my Danielle Noel decks. The art is really compatible and they're beautiful together. I really like the messages. I ended up kind of pulling in that moon energy into a lot of my work in the fellowship for this particular one, which was interesting because like where we were in the quest, we couldn't actually see the moon. So we were in the Mermaid's Cove and then into the cave, and like it's a whole adventure, right? It's a whole narrative journey that we walk through. We pull cards around things. We use dice to help us create these experiences and these encounters. A quest every month follows an overarching story that we are completing together, and every month is also rooted beneath the narrative layer, beneath the story is personal growth work. So for example, for May, we were into the Mermaid's Cove and we were confronting a beast. I don't want to give anything away for anybody who's still working through that particular quest, but these are themes that are all related to kind of looking inward and looking at the parts of ourself that maybe don't necessarily feel in alignment with who we are, like kind of confronting our own inner beast in a way. And so that is was the underlying theme of the month. So while it is a narrative journey and it's a quest and an adventure and it's, inspired by, as I always say, it's not D&D, but inspired by D&D. Beneath that, every month, there is personal growth work that happens beneath that layer. And these two together were great for that. I definitely enjoy the way that these pair together. I ended up pulling in some of the moon energy. I ended up pulling in a little bit of the astrology that was on here. Definitely use these as focal points within the reading. And so these were the two that I primarily worked with for those particular readings. I also pulled in anytime that we met a little character and we're offered the opportunity to invite them to join our party. And if we work with our companion, then occasionally they will add cards to our reading and things like that. I change out my deck all the time for my companions and my guardians and all the other party members that are with us on this quest. I change out the decks to correspond to the other decks that I'm choosing to work with. They don't have dedicated decks in my practice, although several people are using dedicated decks for their companion or their guardian or even themselves, and I think that's absolutely amazing. I'm way too much of a squirrel to make that big of a commitment, so my decks all change. But I used this little Craft Decadence Oracle anytime my companion had the ability to add a card to my reading or to elaborate on the encounter, the experience. This was the deck that I pulled for them because I absolutely love this Oracle deck. The keywords, I really like the collage. The collage is amazing. It's like old school collage. It's beautiful. I love the color palette. I love the gothic, moody, angsty vibe of this whole deck. It's so my jam. But also the key phrases are so unique. They are things that I have not seen in any other Oracle deck, and I really appreciate that about this deck. It is so unique and different. So here we have like the return of misfortune with inescapable fate and unforeseen doom. Divine hacking, ecstatic stroke, mystical bloom. Memento mori, time is fleeting, now or never. Primordial savagery, wild and raw, primitive instinct. I just love this deck. Like, I love this deck and everything about it. And it was such a great one to pull in because it added, like, when you pair it with like all of this like light and, you know, kind of pinky purpley and just all this like sort of, I don't even know, like kind of mystical starseedy sort of energy thing we have going on. And then I pulled in this like dark, moody collage deck with these kind of like really interesting different sort of keywords and phrases. It was amazing. It really added a really wonderful layer to the reading and to the experience and the encounters that I was having throughout this journey, adding this in because it gave me a totally different perspective. And that's kind of the point of the companion, right? They're adding a different perspective. They're adding another layer to the work. And I loved that I chose something so, like, it sits in alignment. Like, they look beautiful together. It sits really firmly in alignment, but it is like the opposite end of the spectrum from these two. And that was amazing. And it added a really, really fantastic layer to my work. So the last deck that I used in my fellowship as part of this was the Ocean Dreams by Danielle Noel. This is her indie ocean oracle. And I used this as my loot deck. So every week we pull a loot card, which does relate to the work that we're doing for that week, but also is something that is accumulative over the whole year and we'll be working with at the end of the year. Here's the backs of these. I mean, they're beautiful. They're beautiful. I really enjoy these. They worked pretty well as loot cards, although sometimes the title isn't really great for what that particular practice is. So I would get into the guidebook and I would read the guidebook and then pull out a couple of keywords from that to add to my loot. But, you know, like this, basically a wrap-up message for the week is kind of what it is. Like, what did I gain? What did I learn? Like, it's my loot, right? What did I get out of this experience? What am I taking with me? And this deck worked really well for that, especially when I got into the guidebook and read, you know, really what the card was talking about. The water imagery just fit really well with this whole sort of Mermaid's Cove kind of thing. I love any of the cards with the whales. They're my favorite. I do have her new mass market oracle now, the Dream Gate, I think it's called. So I'll be playing with that one too. But this one is fantastic. Like, I feel like the Dream Gate is really similar. I haven't compared them because I haven't actually worked with them yet, but they feel pretty similar. So I feel like if you are on the fence with this one, maybe check out the Dream Gate. Just a thought. Real quick, I will show you the dice that I worked with throughout the month for the fellowship. Obviously, this is my fellowship collection. I keep all of my little bits and bobs in here from the fellowship as well as the dice. So I have kind of different dice that I use for different things. This is specifically dice that I roll with my guardian. They're just black and white. And I've shown these all before. This is my representation of my guardian, my representation of my companion. I have my fate changer coin in here. I have my sending stone. And then now I have my sea stone because this is the first stone that we have gathered after our quest. The overarching year-long quest is to gather these 4 different stones, and we finally got the sea stone, so that was amazing. I pulled out a couple of different like dice that I thought maybe I would work with. I think I used these once or twice. They're just these little Amazon blue and brown. I don't know, they kind of look sea-ish. I think I pulled these out at the beginning of the month and I was like, oh, these would work well, and I ended up using these pretty much most of the month. Again, these are just Amazon dice and they are just kind of this purpley blue with the gold lettering, and I love it. I do keep these on hand. These I do tend to use mostly with my companion, but occasionally just for whatever. I don't know. I like to have options. But I tend to have I do have a specific set of dice for my guardian. My companion kind of gets whatever dice, and then I usually have like 1 or 2 sets that I'm working with in alignment with the cards, and these were the sets that I chose for this particular month. These will be different going into June because in June we are going into the Fire Mountain, so totally different energy there. All right, so while we're talking fellowship, let's just take a quick flip through my fellowship journal. I have been keeping this all month long. I think I actually have it on June. I do. There's June, Into the Fire. But going back to May was chapter 5, and this was the Mermaid's Cove. I'm just going to take a quick flip through it because, again, there's no card images in here. So I am rewriting the whole story. The entire quest I put out as a PDF every month. There is an entire narrative in there, which you can just work off of that. You can write your own, however it is that you want to do it. I just take the narrative that I've already written and I rewrite it in first person because this is me and my experience. And then we start every week with the initiative. So this is kind of like what we're going to be tapping into this week. Then we have our encounter, which is our activity, our spread, our prompt, whatever it is, the big work that we're doing for the week. And again, our loot card. So we pretty much follow this process every single week. They do have corresponding dates in the PDF in case anybody wants to use those, because I just need some sort of a framework. But I'll be honest, with as busy as I am these days, I usually sit down and do these all in one go. And they work beautifully in just kind of like a one shot. It's not really a one shot because it's part of an overall campaign, but they work beautifully in a one sitting session. So I sit down, I pull my initiative card or cards, I do my encounter, I pull my loot, and then I record it all into my journal here. And that is really how I've been doing it the last month or two, since I've been extraordinarily busy and I haven't had time to do things on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So if you are in the fellowship and you're finding that doing them 3 times a week is too much, try sitting down and just doing them all at once, because they are actually designed to work both ways. And I personally actually like them better doing them all in one get-go, because it's like I take this nice, beautiful couple hour chunk of time and I really sit down and I focus in on the adventure, and I can really sink into the story, into the narrative. I go through the whole experience of initiative, encounter, and loot, and it really is this beautiful experience that I get to have when I pull them all together. Whereas sometimes when I break them up into Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they feel a little bit discombobulated, and sometimes I have trouble relating one to the other. So if you're in that same boat, or you're just like me and you're pressed for time, try just sitting down and doing them all at once, because they work beautifully that way. Week 2 was going into the hidden passage. So this was where we kind of had to find our way. Then we entered the Lagoon of Illusion. I ended up doing just like really simple doodles with just like these kind of beach grassy looking things that I got going on here. I ended up stamping a moon in most of them. And then anywhere you see here, I have little shape stamps that I use that correspond to the type of the dice. So this is a D20. I rolled a 9 on this card, a 10 on this card, and a 16 on this card. And so I've got that in here. And in the PDF, it says what all those rolls mean. So you're not kind of left to wonder, like it's all written out for you. And then we have the Mermaid Stone, and this is where we got the Sea Stone. So this was our first big moment, turning point in the story and the quest. And so I've got that all in here, and then my encounter, my reading, and of course my loot. And that is it. Then I'm ready to go into the Fire Mountains. So like I said, I sit down and I do these weekly now. So just some food for thought for those of you who are also following along in the fellowship. Also, if you want to jump in at any time, I always put out a adventure diary every single month, and it gives you the story up into this point. So you don't, if you want to like jump in now, even though we're in like going into June and we're into the Fire Mountains, you can jump in at any time, pick right up where we are, and just read through the adventure diary, and it will tell you everything that you need to know about the story so far and let you know anything that you need to do in order to move forward. Just know that if you are thinking about it and you'd like to join the adventure, you don't have to go back. You can just grab that adventure diary, read the story, catch up with where we are, and jump right in. Okay, so that is my fellowship journal, my beautiful Creeping Moon journal. I absolutely love these. So this is my sort of monthly tarot journal, sacred read, like whatever. It's just a journal. I don't know why I need to specify. It is in another Creeping Moon journal, and I think need to go back. Okay, so here we have May. Every month I do sort of an energetic month ahead. It's not predictive, it's more looking at the energy of the month, what I need to be looking at, tapping into. In May, I had intention as my focal point with the Moon and the Emperor. And that was actually really fitting. And I just do a little write-up. It's nothing super fancy, just a little touch base. I can come back and look here at any time at what sort of my energetic resonance was for the month ahead. And it really kind of helps to keep me on track with what I, thought I was going to be doing, what I want to be doing, what I'm focused on. So then we have the big creative reading that I did. I actually showed pieces and parts of doing this particular reading and setting up this journal page in the first Dear Diary I did. I will be doing more of those. So if you enjoyed that, thank you so much for watching it, for one, because this is really just me rambling. But also I'll be doing more of them because I know a few people have asked. I've got my reading in here, my printout, and then this was just the page that I collaged to kind of put that all together. This was my birthday spread. So I used the decks that I was talking about earlier with the Modern Nirvana, the Tarot de Color Tides, and the Paper Oracle. And again, this was just like a kind of checking in at where I am on my birthday, right? Year after year, I do a birthday. I think this is the first year that I haven't used the Llewellyn Tarot in a really long time, and that's very, very telling. I usually go to the Llewellyn, but I've been moving into kind of the Tarot de Carlotides / Streaming Way era of my life, apparently. So yeah, this is the decks I use. They were also my main working decks for the month, so it seemed fitting. Then I have my big Lilith spread that I did here, and this was connecting with Lilith energy for the month, kind of what I need to know from her and that energy that I'm going to be working with. I got Mother of Demons was my kind of my conduit into the energy of her. And then I had the Seven of Grails, the Lover, and the Five of Scepters. And I just pulled a message out of the Lilith guidebook because it was really fitting for what I had going on. And it's kind of just a touch point for me. I do other Lilith work throughout the month. This was kind of the main like anchor reading, and then everything sort of flows out from there. I don't put all of that into my journal. I just put kind of like the main readings in here, this kind of sacred moments. And I think that's it. I kind of did some reflection on the month and some of the things that I was thinking or feeling. Have a picture from my birthday. So I've been doing this kind of like wrap up. I decided not to do, I think the month before I did like in the few months prior, I've been doing this kind of like a favorites thing. But I realized that this is kind of just a repeat of what's in my planner. So I kind of stopped doing that because all of that is in my planner, and just kind of made a list of the decks that I worked with through the month instead. And then I just have this picture that I took when we were at the Oregon coast for my birthday with the Northern Lights, which was amazing. So there we go. That is my tarot practice. Are we gonna throw some stuff on the table? I mean, sure, we're gonna throw stuff on the table because that's what we do in the end of these videos. All right, that is my tarot practice throughout the month of May. As always, I'll leave links for everything I can link in the description box below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you had a beautiful May, and I wish you many blessings moving into June.